Hi, everybody. This is Anna Vick. I'm the co-director of awareness for Push for Empowered Pregnancy. Tonight, I have a story for everybody to share a little bit of why we feel that kid counting is so important, but also for the providers to hear her, as the CDC has a campaign right now about paying attention to what is reported by the birthing parent so that we can work together and have better outcomes. And so I want to let my guest here introduce herself.
All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Jennifer Abrams. So my daughter Liliana was born at 40 weeks in August of last year. So they found that her cause of death was a hypercoiled cord, is the most likely thing they found. And should I go ahead and just talk about the whole thing?
Yeah.
Ask questions?
So what we want normally is just to explain a little bit about the pregnancy itself. Were you feeling like everything until that point then was fine?
Oh, yeah. Okay. So I had like a group provider at first. I saw a bunch of different people, and the OB I had in the kind of in the middle, like they did a 20-week scan, everything was fine. Like they even checked the cord, which is interesting because I was told afterwards, they often don't check the cord during the 20-week scan. It's not so much of a typical thing, but they did, and everything was fine, at least at that point. So, I wasn't like flagged for any additional follow-up really. And that was my last ultrasound. And yeah, so I had very, very normal pregnancy, like textbook, super easy. Like my appointments tend to be very short because everything's good. Everything's good. Test results are good. Okay, guess we're done. Like very, very straightforward, first pregnancy, low risk. So not a lot of extra stuff. This is typical, And so I had my last prenatal appointment. I was 39 weeks and 6 days. And then at exactly 40 weeks, that was my due date. It's funny, I was in a cafe with my husband. We were just kind of enjoying our last few days of like pre-parenthood. And I just kind of felt these like stabbing pains in my belly. And being my first baby, I didn't really know what to think of it. I'm like, I guess this is labor. Like, I know it's supposed to be painful, and like, okay, and so I felt stabbing pains. Then I felt I just felt like a sense of doom, which was really, really strange. Like I had never heard of that happening with labor before. I was like, oh, maybe I'm just like way more freaked out about it than I thought. Like, I didn't think I feel pretty prepared. Like I don't feel that scared of labor. Like, why am I feeling this horrible feeling? And then my baby became very active all of a sudden, and it wasn't too surprising because she had been very active like the whole time. And like, well, now I know that like hyperactivity can actually be a sign, which I had no idea before, but she was very active pretty much the whole pregnancy. So it didn't feel all that different. And then I'd actually done my kick counts like 3 hours before this. It was like a 5 p.m. or so. So like 3 hours before, she had gotten to 10 movements in like 4 minutes and 30 seconds even. So like very, very quick. So I really like had no reason to think anything was wrong as far as anyone knew, And so this happened. So I felt these kind of stabbing pains and like just kind of cramping like on and off for like 20 minutes. And I actually started timing it because I really thought like, oh, this is labor. It's coming on like hard and fast, So I just started timing it and didn't really think anything was wrong. And then just kind of stopped. And just kind of as suddenly as it started. And I was like, okay, that was like really weird. And so then I felt, reduced movement. Like I didn't really feel any movement after that. So I really very quickly was like, okay, I'm used to feeling her like almost all the time. This is really different. So I called my provider and she says, like, oh, as long as you can get to, 10 movements in 2 hours, like that's fine. Like that's within the range of normal. And I said like, that's a lot fast. It's a lot more time than she usually takes to get to 10 movements. It's usually very, under 10 minutes, 10, 15 minutes at the max. And so I was like, I don't know, but I trusted her because she knows what she's doing, been in the business a long time. So I'm like, okay. And so I did the whole, line my belly, like push my belly around, like drink something sweet, and I did feel something. Like I'm pretty sure, like in retrospect, I don't think she was still with us. I think it was just her body kind of just moving around, when you push on your belly, of course you're going to feel something, so I'm pretty sure that's just these little taps, and it would take like half an hour or so, like, to get to that point. And it was like so light, these little taps, that I even like asked my husband, I'm like, can you like touch my belly, see if you feel anything? Like, it's so light, I'm not even sure if I'm feeling anything. And then so we both kind of did it, and like it just felt really off, really weird. But then anytime I would ask, like, they're like, okay, as long as you're getting to the 10 movements, you're fine. I'm like, okay, so it just kind of continued like that for almost a week. And then so 6 days after this incident, I finally went into labor. And then of course when I got to the hospital, they couldn't find our, so same story, we all have, so that was it. That was, yeah, just, I really wish I'd known about, kind of listened to my gut. Like, I felt like, this isn't normal. It's not like her normal. And like, I kind of knew that intuitively, but obviously she wasn't updated on what the current, like recommendations are, other than, 10 minutes or 10 movements, 2 hours, that's kind of the standard. And like, now I kind of feel like, it's funny. They always say, like, don't stress out, try to be relaxed, because baby kind of feel what you're feeling. And I'm like, okay, yeah, I get that. But now I kind of feel like, I kind of think it goes both ways. Like, I think that horrible, like, the world is ending feeling was actually coming from her. Like, her distress was kind of, being sort of transmitted to me the way that my feelings would kind of be transmitted to her, is what I suspect might have happened in retrospect. I don't really know.
Well, mother's intuition is very strong, and it's definitely already there when you're pregnant, and that's why providers are supposed to listen to you. You're the mother carrying the baby. And I know that the reason we connected was from TikTok, where you sent the video about your counting kicks, where it showed clearly that there was a change in those days prior to the loss, which was, like you said, very dramatic, because she used to be so active. And then it was slowing. But this is where, it fell on the provider side, because you did your part. You were tracking movements, you were getting to know her, and then you were reporting to the provider the change, and then they dismissed it. Unfortunately, it sounds like they definitely talked you down from what your heart was saying, like, this isn't right, something's not right here. So I thought that this story was important for us to share, because of course people assume like the parent wasn't doing what they needed, or there was something wrong with the pregnancy. What we already covered, this pregnancy was perfect, just like my own. My son, who was, just as active all the time, and Kit County wasn't discussed with me at all.
Oh, really? Not at all?
Wow. I found out recently I might have been given a pamphlet. He said I might have a pamphlet when I got pregnant, which was early on, and you read 1,000 things and it didn't really soak into what it was or why you needed to do it. Did anyone tell you about stillbirth? Like, was that a thought?
Not really. Like, I'm really disappointed they didn't tell you. Like, they really should tell you. Like, I was always told like around 28 weeks is when they kind of start educating women for the most part about it. And that was around the time when they suggested I start. So wow, I'm really bummed out they didn't, like, they just stuck it in a pamphlet at the beginning of your pregnancy. How are you supposed to remember that? There's like 600 million things to remember.
Right.
Like, if you don't know you're supposed to do it. Like,
even with my first, though, I had another child. It never really registered if they even mentioned it, because every time you go in, if you get that reassurance from your provider, like, they test everything looks perfect. And if they use this word textbook, which you mentioned, I don't know why anyone would say that to somebody, because what is the textbook of? Every baby is different. So if they're going off of their normal, guideline, like you said, this 10 kicks in 2 hours thing is pretty normal, but that doesn't mean you should be comparing the baby to that. That's like the bare minimum. Steve Rad is a really great OB that we've worked with and talked with in our clubhouse rooms, and he mentioned that. Actually recently posted a quote that he said, the 10 kicks in 2 hours, that's the bare minimum for a child to have. That doesn't mean that this mother who normally has 15 or more in a few minutes should feel okay, though. And so that provider, obviously needs updating. I hope that they hear this from you, or from this video, or from, we can reach out as well as push, but trying really hard, to educate providers as well on, like, not dismissing the parent. If you have a concern, and you're coming in and then your provider's telling you like, oh, no, everything's fine. Well, what are you thinking? Like that patient's going to leave feeling reassured and go home and maybe not even continue to come back in. The important thing is to say, come back every time. And we don't care, what time of night it is. It's not a bother, because you start to feel that way if you're a patient and you're like, oh, I don't want to come in again. They just told me it was fine yesterday.
Yeah. I really think there's this sense of like not bothering people, which is like really sad because like if you like their whole job is to keep you and your baby healthy and like you shouldn't worry about bothering people, even though everyone seems to. I don't know where this idea comes from. Maybe because like appointments tend to be very short and like to the point. You feel like you're wasting their time. I don't know. It's too bad.
Yeah. I mean, that's where we come in with the view that we have as an organization that this is a systemic problem. It's obviously not the individual. We each get told different things by our provider. We each get different care, and we all, may not get the same response to our concerns either. Like we have really good doctors that are working with us, explaining how they do it, and we're like, well, why doesn't every doctor do it that way? Well, this is what we're supposed to be doing, but not everyone really is clear. Like the fetal movement, that's your baby's communication with you. And so if you're feeling this change, that could be anything. It could be a lot of things about the baby, and it could be something about the mother even. What's going on with the pregnancy. We have a lot of, placenta abruptions and things like that can be very dangerous.
Yeah.
And, you might have pain and you might be saying it, but then they're going to tell you, oh, that's normal for, with the stage that you're in, you're going to be going to labor soon. So, or even, so many misconceptions about the end, oh, baby might be running out of room, which is
I was told that too. Babies hibernate, was what I was told, now I'm like, well, that's really not true. I don't even know where that came from.
Yeah, or like that they're getting ready for birth, so maybe
so they slow down. It's like
no, and they definitely shouldn't. So if you're pregnant and watching this and you feel a change of any sort, whether she just mentioned also faster movements, that is a sign possibly of distress for your baby. So make sure you come in right away. We do not recommend even just sitting there calling and asking, because that's just giving an opportunity for you to feel, either dismissed or just delaying yourself from coming in and getting fully checked out. And of course, you don't want to just get like a heart rate monitor, because the heartbeat can continue for, as long as the baby's alive. And you want to make sure they check everything around your baby, the placenta, the cord, make sure the flow is going and all that, so that at the end of the day, when you do leave, you feel actually reassured, not just like talked down from what you're worried about.
I was actually at one of the clubhouse meetings. I think it was Steve. And he said, you don't need permission to go to the ER. I'm like, that is so true. Like, you don't need permission to do anything. You just go get the care you need, and they have to give it to you. Like, that's so true.
Yeah. And it's important because a lot of medicine is based off of, symptoms and reporting of those. And if you're unfortunately like you, and I also saw different doctors in the practice. So I don't think that any of them did this like on purpose or anything.
Yeah.
But, they're going and seeing so many patients, and I come in once a month or whatever I was at the time, and they might not even go to them, might go to the other doctor. So nobody really knew me or my baby at all, and like you said, those appointments can be very quick. So, if you're having any concerns before your appointments, make sure you write a list, go through that with the doctor and make sure that everything's answered and checked before you leave. But if you can, go to a provider that could see only you. Like, I know it's not a possibility for everybody, but consistency of care has been shown to improve outcomes, and it's horrible that our system is not already set up that way.
No, it's definitely so much better when you can see the same person over and over and like establish like a rapport. I think that really is important, like the trust thing. If you get to see someone again and again and again, it's a lot easier to talk to them, express your concerns, I feel. So that would definitely be an improvement, I think, more consistency of care.
So when you had your baby, then they told you that she had passed, and then you had to give birth. Did you go through natural or?
So it was all like, I did find out. So I was like 6 centimeters already by the time I got to the hospital. So I'm like very active labor. And it was very, very shocking, obviously to try to process this, while I'm already, in labor. It was just like so much. And my immediate reaction was like, oh, just knock me out, take her out, get over with this. I don't want to be living in this nightmare any longer than I have to, you know? And let me back it up a little. So the doctor did an ultrasound, you know, and checked the heartbeat, and he found that her kind of like skull bones had kind of done like this. They sort of overlapping a little bit. So she had kind of a triangular skull when she came out, because she'd been gone for a few days. And that's actually how they were able to figure it out. Like, oh, I think she's been gone like 4 or 5 days, which that kind of matches my timeline. I figured it was about 6 days. If she did pass on that one day that I felt that weird movement. Yeah, so then they said, the doctor said, we don't think a C-section is a good idea for your future pregnancies. And I just kind of agreed. Like, I wasn't really gonna like in a mood to argue, so I was just like, okay, I guess we're doing this. And as it turns out, a C-section actually would have been dangerous. Like, they didn't tell me this at the time, but I actually had a really nasty uterine infection because she had been gone for a few days. And it actually was a lot safer to deliver vaginally, because a C-section would have exposed my bloodstream to that like infected amniotic fluid. So it was the safest option. I didn't really have any other choice. I mean, I'm sure if I'd insisted on it, they might have given it to me. But, you know, in retrospect, it was like definitely the right choice, like because of this. And then the infection actually, you know, it's kind of ironic. Everything turned out like so perfectly, you know, except for the one thing that mattered, you know, like had a great birth, like only pushing for like 20 minutes. Really not a lot of complications at all. Everything was great. And then they put me on IV antibiotics immediately. And then I was off them in like less than 48 hours, and I was completely fine. So really absolutely perfect in every other aspect. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's so traumatic. And I think the reason why I really do appreciate when someone like yourself can share is, you know, I know you're reliving something that none of us should have had to live through. And just telling the story. Some people don't even know that stillbirth means you're giving birth, you know.
Yeah.
It's almost like they think it's somehow a miscarriage that is small enough to just disappear. Like, I don't know, you know, you're like, no, this is a full-term baby.
Yeah.
Where do you think it's going to go? You know, we have to go through the same labor and delivery. And, you know, obviously postpartum, we have milk come in, everything is horrific because you don't have that baby to take care of, and, you know, constant reminder of your loss, and, you know, going back home without the baby and having your nursery or wherever you were going to have your child empty. I don't know what it did to your family life after, but for me, it just changed everything. I didn't want to return to work. I couldn't, you know, be seen by the same people because I was pregnant. Up until leaving my maternity leave, I expected I would be able to come back and show off my baby. And, you know, of course not. And you don't even know what to say. Like, I know in your case, you feel like you have somewhat of an answer. I did not. I didn't have any cause. So it's definitely, I think, for a stillbirth to happen without cause, it creates even more stigma and shame and guilt that the parent will then carry forever unless they find out somehow, which I finally did through the Dr. Kleiman research that a lot of people end up doing on the placenta. And that gave me a definitive cause, which is cord compressions. And you know,
so
a lot
kind
of
of similar to
say,
mine, actually.
Yeah, like cord accidents, they call them. It just, to me, seems like at that point, like you had mentioned, the change, your baby might have had a shot. You know, who knows? And like mine, I mean, I was very close because he was still alive when I got there. But had I had proper, you know, fetal movement education from my providers and even heard of stillbirth, I had never heard about it before. Then maybe I would have been more aware of the final days where he might have been fluctuating, and, you know, I could have said something sooner and I'll never know, you know. And that's what I don't want anyone to live with, that what if, you know, we talk about our stories so people can prevent it. And, you know, I hope if someone's watching and you're pregnant, you don't just get afraid, but you get empowered. You see this and you say, you know, if I ever feel something wrong, I will go there and I will not stop till they figure out why. And that's what we want for you all who are watching tonight. I know that, you know, it's really sad for us to go through this, but it does change you as a person. And for me, it made me a much better advocate for my next pregnancies, where, you know, I think I saved my rainbow baby from what could have been a similar outcome. So it will hopefully help Jennifer as well. The lessons that you learned the hard way, which, shouldn't have to be this way. And I'm sorry for that.
Well, I'm really glad you were able to use that knowledge to help your next baby. That's amazing.
Yeah, no, there was times, and it's hard when you speak to an authority, especially like I had one of the best doctors, because of course after loss you get better care.
Yeah.
So I had this really great high risk MFM, and I loved him to death, but I did feel at some point something was wrong with my, I knew I had an infection. I just had a feeling, right? So
yeah.
I kept going in, and they kept telling me, nope, and they were testing things, but end of the day, I did have a GBS infection, which they only found because the last time I came in, I was crying, and the lady said, what else could we do for you to make you feel better? I was like, I don't know, what else could you test for? And so she said, well, the GBS infection, but we don't think you have that. That's kind of common more towards the end. And I was like, not there yet, but turned out I did have it. And she said,
you're right. You're totally right.
Medication. And I've learned a lot, and we're actually going to focus on GBS infections soon here on Push, and it's a cause of stillbirth, and it can also affect, the women as well that are the birthing parents. So super dangerous thing to let go of. So for me, in that moment, I was just like, I can't lose another child, and I don't know, it is like you said, it's so instinctual, but you're talking to somebody who has so much education and experience that at some point you feel like you need to stop. And then me at that point, I'm like, I can't stop. Like, I'm panicking because I know how bad it can go. And the fact that I didn't know about stillbirth with my other babies, and like that could happen to a normal, lower risk pregnancy like mine, which was also called the textbook pregnancy. I now hate that word. I don't use that anymore on any patients, because then it makes you feel invincible. It makes you feel like,
I'm good to go. Nothing's going to go wrong.
What else is wrong? Like, I feel a little bit off, but maybe that's just normal for pregnancy. For me, it was my second time around, but I had a toddler, so I was running around with her. So yeah, for me, it was just like, okay, well, I guess I'm just tired because I'm older and I have a little girl now. But in my body, I felt different. Like, I was just like, I'm really faint. I mean, and you never realize, like, that could be a sign that there's something going on with your child, and like they're eventually going to die. Like, that's the worst case scenario, and you don't think that, and it's never mentioned. If it's never mentioned at all, then why would you even go to that? You're not going to think that. So I do think when we talk about stillbirth, it's not to like scare the whole birthing community. It's not going to happen to everyone, thank God. It's 1 out of 170, still less than 1% chance, but we're sitting here as people that it's happened to, and it shouldn't have, and could have possibly been caught, could have possibly been saved, these babies. So we do want everyone to be more aware and definitely more active in trying to prevent it. Providers have a lot of responsibility already to check all the other different things, but don't leave out the empowerment piece of your patients and informing them, like, what can they be doing? And that's kick counting, right? And that's standing up for yourself and not letting someone tell you, that symptom means it's this, especially all the false information you were given, Jennifer. I mean, you just kept saying one thing after another that we're constantly trying to stop those misconceptions. Babies do not run out of room. You should not slow down at the end of pregnancy. You should not be drinking sugary things or ice things to make them move if they're already sluggish. That's probably
because that kind of like gives you almost like a false positive, right? If you're like, oh well, okay, there, I just like hyped them up on sugar and cold water, and now they're moving around. Like that should not be a reading. Doesn't sound good.
No. So you never once went in to get tested in those few days, like
no,
I was just telling you it was fine.
No, I really wish I had in retrospect. Like, I really like, I mean, I was like crying. I was so panicky, I think I knew something was wrong, but I was just, I'm just being a crazy pregnant lady. I really feel like, what, always a what if, what if I'd gone in, he said it was 4 or 5 days. I feel like it was 6 days. Maybe it actually was 4 or 5 days and I had a day or two to act. Maybe if I'd gone in, this all would have been different. You always do that, run through these scenarios in your head. But, I feel like what's done is done. Like, I can't bring her back. but I can tell other moms, you know, what to do if they're in my situation. So maybe we can save a few or many, you know? So that's really why I want to like tell everyone about it. Like really don't ignore your mama instincts. Like go get checked out. Doesn't matter if they know your first name at the emergency room. Like as long as you and your baby are okay, that's really all that matters at the end of the day. So.
Yeah, definitely. And you know, we don't want anyone to have regrets. You won't regret that you came in, you know, even if you came in and it turned out everything is fine. And, you know, I hear a lot of stories too of people who say, oh, my baby slowed down, but she was fine. I'm like, well, that's great for you, you know, because it can happen that you make it in time and the delivery's just fine. And that baby could have been very close. And we don't know. We don't know if a stillbirth isn't happening, you know, so
Yeah.
we don't know if the placenta was a little bit small and she just happened to be a really good fighter and you got her out in the right timing. But those stories anecdotally should not erase the fact that, you know, if you feel a change, you should go in, you know. If you ask your sisters or whoever has had babies before you and they say, no, that's fine. That's what my baby did, you know. No, like that was her child and that child could have got lucky or could have been normal for them.
Yeah.
Don't compare it to anybody else's pregnancy, even your own. I mean, I had different pregnancies, so you're not going to experience the same thing with each child. And you know, it is about getting to know them. Their patterns are kind of like their personality, you know. So if you start to kick count every day, we usually recommend using an app like Count the Kicks, which is, you know, freely available, 12 different language, I believe right now. It's just great to have something that you can back up your feelings with. You know, it's not supposed to be in place of it, of course, like you should still trust your gut, but that's for you to have, you know, like a graph that comes out of that as well, where you can see like, okay, there's a dip today, or you know, more activity, and even you can put strength on that app.
Yeah, I found that so helpful. Like I had like, you know, 2, 3, 4 footprints, and then I had like 1 footprint, you know, so you can definitely see the changes very visually, very easily. That's a great app.
But even with having the app, you felt like just the dismissal of your feelings was enough to keep you at home.
Yeah, just like I just didn't know better. They're like, it's normal, it's fine. I'm like, well, then I guess that means it's normal and it's fine. So yeah.
Yeah, so we can only do so much as parents, and that's why we never, you know, blame ourselves. We don't want to blame any parent if your child has passed, because first of all, you may not even know that this is a possibility. You may not know how to kick count properly. You might have the app and be doing it and then report it, and unfortunate have the wrong person tell you, you know, reassurance that they shouldn't. They should just always tell you to come in if you have any concerns. So I feel like this conversation tonight is really more for the provider to hear that's out there. And I know everyone's so busy and doing the best they can. And of course, your goal is to bring this baby home. And maybe you don't see a lot of stillbirths in your practice. And maybe you might have your first one and you might feel like, well, we did everything we could for that baby. But, you know, there could have been an opportunity to educate more on something like this. And maybe that could have been the deciding factor. And also, you know, listening to their concerns, like you just mentioned, is so key. You know, I don't know what else you could have done, to be honest, unless you could have just been like, well, screw it, I'm going to go in anyway. But, you know, you felt fine. You felt reassured. So I really don't think you should carry blame. I know we all have a wish, you know, that had turned out different, as me as well, and all the mothers involved and parents involved with push from power pregnancy. We're all advocating now because we know it's systemically, it's a problem. And, you know, everybody should have the same information across the board on this. It shouldn't be different at every provider's office. So, you know, we're sharing this on social media so anybody in the world can access and see it. But if the providers are on their ends not getting, you know, educated on new research and such about the movements and what they need to do in reaction to that, that's a problem. So we are promoting protocols in this country as well, which we don't have in place for them to do step by step the right things, you know, as they check the patient in, make sure they do all the same things for each patient and tag them, you know, make sure if they come in again, then this time maybe we go further and keep them. Or like, I'm an advocate of staying there, to be honest, if you're the parent though, and just say, you know what, I'm not feeling good, I don't feel good still, I'm staying overnight. And I did, you know, push for that with my last pregnancy, because once they told me something was looking low, my fluid was low. I was like, I'm not going home without the baby this time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I'm sitting here till you deliver, or you can just go ahead and do it now. And so he did keep me a full week.
Well, that's so great that you're able to advocate and like actually get what you asked for. That's so great.
You should. You're the client after all,
Yeah.
right? This is a business and
Mm-hmm.
in our country. So
Yeah.
if you need it and you ask for it, you're going to get it. If you
Yeah.
don't ask, then they're not going to give you extra.
Yeah. Like at the end of the day,
see
they
it.
are like providing a service and you're paying for that service one way or another. So it definitely helps, I think, to kind of flip the script. It's like they're not the boss, like you're the boss. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm the one that has the lifelong grief, my husband as well.
Yeah.
They don't,
Mm-hmm.
they feel partly responsible, or I wish I could have saved that baby, but it's not going to affect them to the same level.
Mm-hmm.
So the parent really does have to look at it like, this is your child. You want this baby here. No matter what, you're going to do what you need to do. It's like if they were really already born, you would, you don't leave them alone. Like you do everything for them. You fight for them. So you have to have the mentality already in pregnancy.
Yeah.
And I think it's just like the reassurance though that you got, and I did, about it being perfect and textbook. It sets you up where you just feel like, well, everything's looking good in there. Like you can't see it. So it's really hard because you don't know like what's going on in there. And they're doing the testing, right? So for parents, I mean, really honestly, it is the feeling, right? Like you said, you felt something emanating from her. And I had that intuition too, where I got really freaked out. And when I finally went in, so listen to that. I mean, that might be a sign as well if something's happening. I do think it's actually in research reported a lot of times that women have that feeling of doom, like you mentioned.
Yeah, that sense. It's funny. That's actually common in like not just, like pregnancies, but I've heard people have heart attacks. They have this feeling of doom. It's actually like it's a documented thing. It's not just crazy brain. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And like, even if we don't know exactly like what the science is behind that feeling or like why it happens, like we definitely like it is 100% documented phenomenon, and it is like a real symptom you should be watching out for. In my opinion.
Do you want to share anything about your daughter? Do you want to give us her name and anything about her that you remember?
So full name was Lillian Auden Abrams. She was our first. And she was really, really, really active like the whole time. Like it was really fun because she was so responsive and active, we could always like interact with her and she would always respond, really quickly. Like I would, it was funny because I noticed like I put my hand on her belly and we kind of played tag a little bit. Like I, move my hand, she moved her foot or elbow or whatever. I moved my hand, she moved. That was really fun. We just like play tag on my belly. And then like whenever it's funny, whenever she was like kicking a lot, I would call my husband over, like, hey, come feel the baby. And then like as soon as he put his hand on my belly, she would just like, oh, that's nice, and just kind of relax. And so I think like for some reason his hand like calmed her down, and then he'd be like, oh, I don't feel it. I'm like, oh, she was just kicking a second ago. Yeah. Yeah, she was super cute. She had really, really just looked like me as a baby. Like almost like she had like my nose, my lips, like but she also definitely kind of had like my husband's like jaw. Like it's funny. I always thought when people say, they look at newborns, they're like, oh, she has this and that and that. And like, I'm like, oh, babies, you can't really tell that early. And now I'm like, oh, wow, I was totally wrong. You totally can't tell that early. Like babies have very strong little features. You can clearly identify which side of the family they came from. I thought that was like so cool.
Oh, so thankful to hear more about Lily. Yeah, it's tough. I mean, for your firstborn to be the one that passes too, I know it's hard. And have you guys considered if you're going to have pregnancy after loss? And
yeah, no, definitely. I think it was really hard losing your first, and I have read that like statistically it's more likely for your first to be stillborn, right? Like slightly increased risk with your first. Yeah. So like that is really sad because people don't really see you as a mom. They almost kind of forget about your baby and your motherhood, right? Really quickly because you don't have a baby right with you, so they just kind of like I don't know, like blank it out from their minds, which is really, really hard to deal with, like not having that sort of identity as a mom. Well, you obviously have it. Other people don't see it that way, and that's really sad. But yeah, we are 100% planning to have more kids. We're probably going to start trying like again later this year. So yeah, we don't know what the future holds, but definitely hoping for like a few more kids. And it's funny, before I got pregnant, I thought like, oh, maybe like 2 or 3. Now I'm like, oh, I kind of want like, it'd be nice to have a few more, you know? So we'll see, you know, it's all, you can't plan too much in the future, but
Yeah,
definitely hoping to have more kids soon.
That's really brave to even feel like you can do it more than once more. I did once more. I mean, I lost the baby after one too. I had carriage before and after, so I'd already been through plenty of pregnancy myself, and I was like, I'm done after the next one. And thank God he was fine, and that was it for me, because it's just really nerve-wracking to go to
I bet.
you know, I hope that you get, you know, really great care and that you feel heard this time. And I'm not sure if you're planning to go with the same group again, but
yeah, they sort of transferred me over to an MFN. We had a consultation like last week, and I feel really comfortable with him. He really seems to be like, he's very good at listening. He's very empathetic. So I'll be mostly vicarily with him for the most part. So I feel really good about that if we end up staying around here.
That's good. It is important, I think, to have, for me, I needed a new person completely, because it was like it felt handled wrong, but also just to know like you're getting a little extra care, you know, and that's kind of what we're now going to be able to provide with the Rainbow Clinic. We just opened in New York City with Mount Sinai, and, you know, we really supported that effort, because like Fernanda, who is the mother who came up with this idea, is like, I really wish we had that for pregnancy after loss in America, because they have it over there in the UK, the clinic, and it's just amazing to see the level of care. They do more for your pregnancy. They're actually able to like reduce stillbirth rates in their practice, which is interesting, because stillbirths usually reoccur supposedly, right? So if you have had a stillbirth, you have a higher risk. But they're actually less in there because of what they're doing. Like, they're providing better care. They're actually seeing what the previous stillbirth was caused, like what was the cause, so that we can work that into, you know, tailored care. And of course, like more monitoring at the ends. And our clinic is going to be doing measuring of placenta, which is great, because that's something we're advocating for. You know, that's your baby's life source. And if you're not tracking if it's growing appropriate to the baby size, you can lose a baby at full term again with, you know, just the fact that this placenta was too small all of a sudden.
Yeah, it blows my mind that some doctors just refuse to measure the placenta. Like, it's such an easy measurement to take.
Yeah,
some
well,
doctors
they're not
just
required
won't
to
do it.
yet, so we're working on it. We have our campaigns, and we're talking with ACOG about that and seeing what more research they need to prove, you know, the fact that. But of course, it is in a lot of research that placentas are one of the highest causes of stillbirth, and especially smaller placentas. So we don't feel like we need to give too much more research, but we're working on it just to make sure that it gets done at every clinic. But we do want like providers to really take a serious look at what you're doing in your offices, what your staff is saying, what your ERs are responding to late night calls with. You know, don't dismiss the parents. Don't tell them to stay home or to drink something sugary. I mean, these are old things that are still being said. And, you know, in my case, I was told to eat a meal, well, after I already had done kick counting for a while. So these are really critical moments. And I'm sure, you know, you as a provider are aware of that. But if you say anything to this patient to make them feel, you know, comfortable and okay, then they might just stay there. And what you want is to let them come in, have them fully checked out, and then everyone could be at peace, you know, knowing that this baby's still okay and hopefully delivering, you know, a little bit later. But if you have to deliver early, I do think it's better, you know, just get the baby out if they're in distress. And I know there has to be a lot of consideration for that, but I would have rather had my son in a NICU for a little bit, to be honest.
Well, 100%. I think we all would.
Yeah. And it's tough because you don't know until that moment. Who would have known, right? I actually thought when I was delivering that I would have a NICU baby when I woke up, and he was dead. So not what I expected at all. But we tried.
That's so hard.
Yeah. But I think
it's really better. Yeah, it's really a shame like how much time it takes for like really solid evidence-based practice to kind of trickle all the way down to like, this is what we do now. You know, like another good example is like folic acid. Like, they knew in the 90s, there was very strong evidence that folic acid can prevent spina bifida and like neural tube defects. Like, they knew this for like 10 years before it became standard practice. And then as soon as they started implementing it, like, the rates went way down. Like, you don't have to wait until it's like you're forced to, because those are the official guidelines. Like, you can just go ahead and implement this as soon as you find out that there's strong evidence behind it, which there is, So I think that's a really good argument to just look at what's been done in the past and how much of a difference you can make as a provider. Just go ahead and act on this research without waiting for it to make its way down. You know what I mean?
Well, I'm thankful that you shared Lily's story and everything that went on in your pregnancy. And I'm so sorry. I mean, it's so tragic because it really could have been caught at that point when you were speaking up. And I really hope that anyone watching takes this as a lesson, which we hope, our babies' lives will have a legacy of saving babies. So if you hear of anybody being dismissed, or if you yourself are doing it, check yourself, or, if you're the patient and you feel like it's being kind of brushed off, just don't worry about that. Go back in there. We want you guys to be really strong and empowered, and, make sure that your babies are kept safe. And hopefully by counting kicks regularly, like we're talking about all week long, you'll get to know that pattern and, your baby's personality, and your partner can support you too and sit down with you and do this on a daily basis so that you don't feel like it's all on your shoulders, and, you guys can speak up together for your baby. I think that would be, really great. Thing to come out of this.
And tell your sisters, tell your cousins, tell your friends, just like tell everyone in your circle. Like, they may never heard it before, so it's good to share.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Jennifer. I hope you have a good night. And thank you for everyone who's watching us. Please share this. We didn't do this one live because, of course, it's a really delicate conversation, but we hope that it will help you. And please make a comment, ask us any questions, and we'll be back on to check our comments later. Have a good night, everybody.
All right. Thank you.
Bye.